Hi everyone, and welcome to this video, the second video of the Catalan. Today I'm going to cover two variations which should bring us about halfway through the Catalan for the 10 move series that I'm doing. So yeah, let's get straight into it. After we get to our Catalan position, d4, d5, c4, e6. Yeah, we're playing knight f3, knight f6, g3. So we're looking at takes today again, as we did in the previous video. And after bishop g2, last week we had a look at last video we had a look at bishop d7 and c6 as two different approaches on the fifth move. But on this video we're going to be looking at bishop b4, and we're also going to be looking at knight b to d7. Alright, so let's get straight into that and start
check
with bishop b4 check. From here as white we're playing bishop d2, and now black has four options. I think c5, a5, bishop e7, yeah, and also to take on d2. So there's four options, so a little bit to look at here, and let's start with taking on d2. For here, the response for white is to take on d2 with the queen, and after black castles, we play knight a3. Now, this is a fairly common move in the Catalan, and even though it looks ridiculous, it's the correct move often, because it just the idea is to just take back the material, and yeah, for this continuation, this specific continuation is quite interesting, a little bit tricky. It's queen e7, and after we castle, black here plays c5, and after we take, rook d8. So yeah, don't worry too much about the intricacies of this, maybe, because you may not get this in a hurry. But yeah, after queen c3, queen takes, and then we exchange on c4. But what's to take out of this is more so that knight a3 is often a move to get back the material, and as well, if for example black had responded with anything else really, so if you're in an actual game and black doesn't here play c5, even say plays c6, we can just take the material back immediately. Another good move versus c6 later on down the track is knight to e5, and that's something we saw in the previous variations where c6 was played. It just puts a lot of pressure on that pawn off, and is in a good position to be. Alright, so that's the variation. That's a little over 10 moves deep, but yeah, that gives us an idea of if bishop takes. Now there's bishop back, there's c5, and there's a5. Let's have a quick look at c5. So after c5, we simply take the bishop. After c takes, we play this move, knight to e5 again. So we just see this a lot. There's not, within all these variations, there's quite a lot of similarities, I guess, and it's fairly logical. The idea is always just to regain the material on c4, and after castling, that's exactly what we do. And then mainline continues knight c3, attacking the pawn, and just very comfortably we play e3. So it's 10 moves deep, very logical stuff, reusing the same sort of moves, and yeah, I think you should feel confident with that. Now the other option is here. So we've looked at takes, and we've looked at c5. Now let's look at bishop back to e7, and then yeah, the last one we'll look at is a5. Okay, but for bishop back to e7, our response as white is simply queen to c2 with the idea of taking the material back on c4. To this, black plays bishop d7 as the main line, and last time we saw this bishop to d7 maneuver was in the first video, and we're responding the same way, and that's with knight e5. And to this, black responds knight c6 as the main line, and we just take the material as intended. And we can see in all these variations it starts to become a bit clear what the Catalan's about, and that's sort of doing these moves that you wouldn't necessarily do otherwise to get back the material, but otherwise your position's quite solid. And from here the main line continues with just taking on e5, and we recapture, and that's 10 moves deep. But yeah, black will play that knight d5, and we're in, and it's game on from this position. So that's with the bishop back. And the last move I want to have a look at was, so bishop, we just looked at we've looked at c5, we've looked at we've looked at c5, we've looked at bishop back, we've looked at bishop taking, and now the last one I want to have a look at is a5. Alright, so after a5 is white, we play castles, and after castles there's two main options for black. There's knight c6 and there's castling himself. So a quick look at knight c6, putting pressure on the d4 pawn, we just simply protect it. Black here castles, and we play queen e2. This is quite an interesting continuation. We're also protecting the e3 pawn here, which may not look so important, but if we played queen c2, black has e5 at his disposal, and if we were to take, knight retakes after we recapture with d-pawn. There's this g4 move, and this would be unprotected if we played f4, which is what we would want to do here. So yeah, just quick look why. After bishop takes, we do a little exchange there, and then this pawn would be gone. So that's that's the reason why we're not playing queen c2, but instead we're playing queen e2. And then after queen e2, we see that precise variation. So black does use this resource. That's something that black often does. So after e5, I'll just go over it one more time. We would take with the knight, of course. And then after knight takes, d takes e5, and then this knight to g4 move, we can comfortably play f4 with the e3 pawn protected. Alright, so that's if white, let's move back here. That's if black plays after castles. We just had a look at knight c6, but now let's have a look at if black just castles himself. So at this point for white we respond bishop to g5, and here again there's a fork in the road. Black can play b5 or knight c6, and even though there's quite a few variations that we're looking at in different continuations, I think it's worthwhile because it gives us a bit of extra insight into the Catalan, and it's not necessarily only for the purpose of memorizing. So after b5, we can see that immediately we can see that this diagonal's open, which leads to the quite logical move of knight to e5, threatening the rook. A rook move is obviously in order here, and the correct one is rook a6. And at this point, correct move for white here is to play a4. Alright, so that's 10 moves deep, and I would like to just go back now, but without too much more analysis on that, and look at knight c6. So yeah, we just had a look at b5. Let's have a look at knight c6. We simply play e3 again, protecting this d4 pawn, and then after black plays, main line for black is h6, we just exchange on f6, queen takes, and that puts us 10 moves deep. Alright, so that concludes the bishop b4 segment. So let's go back to the beginning and just have a quick overview of what we looked at. So the Catalan, we know how we got there. Knight f3, knight f6, so g3, exchange, and we looked here at the bishop b4 variations. From bishop b4, bishop d2, there was a5, c5, bishop back, and also bishop exchanging. So we just had a look at all of that. Now I want to have a look at, instead of a bishop move here, I want to look at knight b to d7. The intention here for black is to play knight b3, holding on to the material for a little longer, and allowing, the idea is it's meant to take white longer to get back the material, and in that time sort of black can get his pieces into good positions. So the main line is to move the knight to b3, but to b6. However, there's a whole lot of other moves, so let me get rid of these arrows. So that's the main move, but there are other variations I want to look at. There's bishop to e7, there's c6, there's c5, there's a6, and there's rook rook b8. Alright, so let's get straight into having a look at some variations and start off with so the response to knight b to d7. Sorry, let me get rid of arrows again. So knight b to d7 is the move. We castle, and let's start by having a look at c5. So after c5, the idea is black striking at the center and trying to hold on to the c4 pawn here. For white, we play knight to a3. So again, a common theme. And then after black plays c takes d4, we're not worried about that because we're going to get the material back after knight takes c4. There's the main line is bishop to c5, and we continue on with knight takes d4. So I suppose at this point protected. At this point the knight's blocking the queen, and after knight b6 we play a move to protect the knight, which is obviously attacked twice, and the main line is bishop to e3. Alright, so that's the c5 variation. So let's look at where we came from here. So after knight b to d7, which is what we're looking at, and castles for white, we just had a look at c5. Now I want to have a look at c6, and this idea of c6 is very simple. It's simply to prepare b5 and to hold on to the material for longer. And to this we respond the quite appropriate a4, so to contend those sort of b5 moves. And it's quite it's quite an interesting variation this to have a look at, quite instructive. So after a5 we play simply queen c2, so attacking the material again, and then after knight to b6 we're getting the material back, but then that's by knight b to d2, and then after bishop e7 we're simply taking on c4, and so that's our 10 moves deep. Quite instructive though, that material will always get back, or almost always. It's just a case of if black wants to make us take longer to do it, and that's really the concept of that variation. Alright, so we had a look at c6 there. So let's back up and look where we were here. So after knight b to d7 we've been looking at castles. So we've had a look now at c5 and c6, and now I want to have a look at a6. Alright, a6 basically is another way of preparing b5 to support the c4 pawn, and to it we respond in the same way, a logical way of a4. Now black continues with rook b8, and I suppose that makes quite a lot of sense. If we were to move this knight, the b pawn, sorry, not the b pawn, the rook could be fairly vulnerable after b5. So so fairly logical. And then here we continue with a5, and that's to prevent this b pawn being able to defend the c4 pawn. Still though, the main line for black is to play b5, and we take a takes b6, and after c takes b6 we're playing bishop to f4, and so that's tempo gaining as well, but that's 10 moves in, so I want to stop there and have a look at one of the other continuations, which is rook b8. So let's go back. Okay, so here after knight b d7, so what have we looked at? c6, c5. It's a bit like almost one of those songs that continue repetitively, but anyway, not too many variations left. Just we've looked at a6 as well, so it's otherwise possible to get lost with what you're doing. It's good to know what you've looked at. So the other option is, of course, after castles there's rook b8. This is quite an interesting variation because again the main common thing with this knight b d7 original move is to play b5, and this is not different. So the correct move here is a4, and then after a4, of course, if white played a6, we're transposing into the variation we just had a look at by a5, and then yeah, after b5 we're taking on b6, so that would transpose, but the actual variation here, the main variation, is b6, and from this we respond knight f to d2, and then quite logically, but black uses this rook on b8, so plays supports bishop b7, removing our super strong bishop there. After we take, rook takes, and we get our material back, and that's 10 moves deep. So let's look back and recap and look at the final. I think the final variation. So after knight bd7, we castle. We've looked at these, c6 and c5. We've looked at a6. We've also looked at rook b8. The final one to have a look at in this video is bishop e7, and from here we play knight b to d2, and black plays knight to b6, more of just a developing move than really the goal of holding on to the material. But we still need to do the job as white, and that's by playing queen c2, and then after castles we play knight takes c4, and after knight c4 we take back with the queen. There's one more variation, and that's actually the main line. The main variation. Just have a quick look back. Here the final one is knight b6. So after knight b6 we bring the knight in again to recapture on c4, and we can see how sort of, I suppose, repetitive a lot of this is. And then after c5, repetitive, which is good because we're hopefully understanding it a lot. After c5 we play knight c4. We're of course not losing this knight. The continuation is after knight takes c4.
Check.
We're playing check, and bishop d7, and then we recapture the knight on c4, and that's 10 moves deep in the final continuation. So I would like to just recap what we've had a look at so far in the last two videos. So we've looked at knight b to d7. We looked at this video as well. We've also looked at bishop b4 this video. The previous video we had a look at c6 and bishop d7, and in the next video we'll be having a look at, let me get rid of some of these arrows. In the next video we'll be having a look at c5 straight away without any knight move or anything, and also a6 straight away. After that we'll be about halfway through, maybe a little over halfway through the Catalan, so it should be about a 6 video series in total. But I hope it's instructive, hope you're trying it out in games. I'm really enjoying playing it, and I'm looking forward to next video. Thanks very much.